Chronicles, pushing through as we continue to get into our journey of voices with everybody who is on the front lines, entrepreneurs, persons in community, in industry, professionals, youth. It's so critical that we all hold space and all find time to connect, explore, and really just unpack what is going on and what is the change and action that we feel we need to see and that we must be a part of. So stay tuned. I have to officially say, appreciate you giving some of your time and energy, especially with everything that's going on, to give us some insight, give us some knowledge, and let us know what's going on where you are and with your life. So I guess, just diving right into it with the who, obviously I know you as Tawfik Aly, but, the whole name is Hasnia, so get it all in there. But yeah, could you just give us a 1-2 of, who are you and, what are you up to with some of the hats that you wear, obviously as a Canadian citizen, but you're currently abroad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, thank you very much for having me over, for having me on the on Zoom, and we're having this discussion because I totally agree with you 100%. Is that every continent, every country deal with this pandemic differently, and people need to realize and see for themselves, and here as well, how are things are being dealt separately with the community that you live in and the country you live in, with the health authority, with the government's reactions towards the pandemic. That's very important for people to know. Well, first of all, let me start. I mean, my name is Tawfik Aly. I'm just a Canadian citizen. I was born in Egypt with Palestinian descent, and I've been living between Dubai and Kuwait since 2002 when I left Canada, basically looking for opportunities outside of Canada. You know what I mean? Just that was basically the reason why, so you understand why I left, why I'm being here. It's just I was searching for new challenges, new opportunities, and as you rightly said, just wearing different hats and trying to adapt to the lifestyle and that I'm living in. Since 2002, my residency was constricted between Dubai and Kuwait, mainly in Dubai, and Kuwait is sort of like, back and forth situation kind of thing because of work and so on. I still do have family that lives in Halifax and Toronto. I have family that lives in Dubai and friends, and then also I have in Kuwait here. That's one of the reasons why Kuwait was one of the hubs that I'm being here as well, is the family connection. Anyways, having said all that, I come also from a background that has the hospitality industry, and business management. However, again, this is one of the things. When I moved to Dubai, the hospitality industry was not as challenging as I thought it was at the time in 2002, because I didn't find it. I didn't find the salary was good enough. I didn't find, just as you know, Dubai is expensive, so it's kind of difficult to just kind of look for a job and work your way up, and try and adapt to the lifestyle in Dubai. So I had to shift careers, and try something else, which I got into the sales and marketing career. And I've been there ever since 2003 until now. I worked as a country manager for one of the leading companies in the FMCG in Dubai. I had the privilege in working in the real estate industry in Dubai while it's booming before the recession in 2008, and I continued until 2010, and then I shifted career to the FMCG career for 5 years, and then now I took on a new challenge in 2014, which is being senior consultant for assisting people on relocating assisting people relocating from one country to another or one continent to another based on their needs, either because they're looking for better healthcare, better education, better lifestyle, and so on and so forth. So that's me in terms of work and where I'm from and all that kind of stuff. You know,
maybe the underlying theme or the patterns of kind of this COVID-19 experience has been been the vast majority of what's going on is underlined by a lot of unknown, and even
yeah,
whether that's at the the top down level or the bottom up level, which gives rise to misinformation and gives rise to people having to make some decisions on their own, unless they're following the government's you know decisions and orders and practices. And so it's like that time in between of when things are fully formalized, becomes tough. And as you
yeah.
said, you have to make some of those decisions. So for you, now being grounded, or to kind of go from that point of, okay, all flights are grounded. What was the point in Kuwait, where it started to, obviously it was hitting home, but what did the government do, or how quickly did they mobilize, implementing some other rules, or focusing on protection, and what were some of the measures that they took early on?
First thing that the government took, which is a very wise decision on their behalf, which I don't want to criticize a lot of. I don't want to be critic to other governments, but some other governments have taken late decisions on stopping, their flights in and out, or closing borders, for example. But Kuwait was the first one to, in my opinion, one of the first ones that stopped the flights, incoming and outgoing, and try to put a control on the coronavirus within the country. Then they start creating awarenesses on TV, every 15, 20 minutes between movies. You got a movie and then you got a break for 5 minutes, and then you'll see an ad coming in, and either by SMS also. You see a lot, from the health authority sending you messages how to stay clean, how to sanitize, how to um, you know um, keep your distance. They've done a lot of commercials and a lot of ads in the beginning, but once the government or the health authorities start announcing those things, that you have to do with the social distancing, the wearing the masks, sanitizing, wearing the gloves, and you got the health authority and the government is looking at what's people reaction, on the streets. Basically, that's what it is. This is where it comes down to. So the next step they took is, we're just gonna, they have delayed, until they've announced, for educationally, for university and schools, that they will resume, back in next September, late August, early September. That's when the schools were going to start, because again, they don't want crowdness, because learning from the disease, it social distancing is a very important fact of not spreading the disease. And so that's also another measure that was the second step. you know so it was ground flights, grounded flights, and then a lot of commercials, a lot of ads, SMSs, and then the third thing was the schools. Fourth thing they did is they imposed curfews. um and even when you go to the supermarket, when you go to the supermarket, you're not allowed to go in without masks and gloves. And you got someone right at the in front of the supermarkets, all wearing like a suit with the a temperature gun. And before you go in, it just kind of like taking your temperature. And if if your temperature is high, it doesn't let you in. You just go check your nearest hospital. Um, so there was a lot of awareness in terms of what the government has done, and also now the other thing too that they're doing, that they have again sending SMSs with a certain number, if you and they tell you the symptoms of the COVID-19. If you feel this and that, if you feel that you have high temperature, sore throat, you can't taste, or you can't smell very good, or something like that, your food, or you can't eat or test, you can just call, and let them know your symptoms, and it depends on the severity. It's either they'll tell you to come in for a testing, or they can send someone to pick you up, you know and so again, it was all about social distancing, but it was just taking into steps. And then after that, they start stopping all the shopping centers. They close all the shopping centers around the city. The beaches all closed. You're not even allowed to walk on the beach, let alone swim. You know what I mean? That's not even also allowed. Another thing they have, it's every day. The government, whenever there's a loophole they find, immediately the next day they announce it over. It's either by the newspaper or on TV. For example, the 3 weeks ago, they said no kids are allowed in the car. We canceled schools because we want the kids to be at home and be safe. So why would you want to have your kids be in the car and take them outside? You know what I mean? So if anybody has kids in their car, and a police car driving by, doom, you're fined. You're gonna get a hefty fine. You know, if you're walking around without any gloves or masks, you get a fine. You know, not more than two people are out in the car. Those are all the steps that are taking. They're being taken by the government and the health local authorities to prevent as much as they can the spread of the COVID-19.
You're not in a situation where you do have the savings, or I mean, the vast majority of people are impacted. Kind of from what you've been able to tweak of your routine, what are some positives that you would say would be beneficial for people to do? Because obviously, like, this is a transition, and so one of the things about a transition period is the level of support you have, the level of connections you have with others, um, you know, your headspace about what's going on, right? So if people are starting to have an understanding of, okay, well, this is a longer term game, that means you have more ability to start putting some things in play, as you said, taking more strategic risks. What are a few things that, whether it's things that you've done, for this long haul, as this COVID-19, stretches from, right now into, the next couple quarters?
People must right now have to take this moment, and really sit, and everybody has to look at their business model, whether he's an employee or self-employed, an entrepreneur, because I'll give you an example. If you work in the travel and tourism industry, you better look for another job. I'm sorry to say it straightforward as it comes, Andreas. I'll give it to you straight as an arrow. Someone is working has a job in the tourism industry that's shut down for at least, we're not looking at a tourism industry to be in place for another year and a half at least, or not or even 2 years. So can someone who works in the tourism industry can be out of a job for 2 years? So that's what I'm trying to tell you. So people will have to sit and think over with themselves, what am I going to do next? You have to read and connect the dots and come up with your own conclusion, you know and I'll for again, airlines, same thing, got hit hard. Local restaurants are getting hit hard. So it's going to be a lot of challenges coming in ahead. It's not going to be easy. People need to be patient, understanding. But my concerns when it comes to the community impact of COVID-19 is very stressed out of your mind. You know what I mean? And And that's why when we see in some of the cities, where do we see that? In DC or something like that recently? People just went outside and says they just went against the lockdown. I don't know which state it is, but anyways, they went against the lockdown a week ago, because people they're out of jobs, they're out of money, you know. And if they don't have savings, people are not going to abide by the rules. They're going to say, I'm just going to get out, do whatever I want to do. I want to get out and do whatever I want to do. I'm start taking courses to update myself. So I'm doing a plan B. And that's what people need to do. I right now, for example, I'm just giving an example. Just right now, if I'm working in the hospitality industry or the flight or the airline industry, that's my profession. But what can I do while I'm at home as a plan B? If this was to fail, how can I back myself up right away? You still got responsibility, you still got a family to support. A person needs to think where they are right now, and they need to be really realistic with themselves. Is my industry going to recover immediately after this? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to have a job after this? And the person who's doing that, he's the only person that has that answer themselves. He or she have that answer themselves, and they have to be realistic.
Going in and doing training, working out, and all of these things, that you're speaking to a wider opportunity. It's not just a plan B, but it really sounds like you're talking about evaluating where you're at and figuring out how you fit into this new space. Because I feel, one of the things that really is going to come to light through this, and then it kind of changed my perspective, I guess, putting that lens on it. But at the end of this tunnel, if we're calling it that, there will be a paradigm shift fully. We're going to be in a new space, in a new environment, globally. And so this kind of, window is a lot of unknown uncertainty, a lot of movement, a lot of change. But by the end of this, there's going to be something very grounded, and it's going to be a different space, a different environment with different needs. So as you're talking about that, if somebody's trying to be, brutally honest, whether they're older or younger, whether they have family or not, part of the challenge in being home is, you're alone with yourself, you're alone with your thoughts. If you have family or loved ones you have to support, so whether they're siblings or kids, that's also part of the challenge, because now you have to deal with them. So because again, it's affecting everywhere. So, and in terms of that, tangibly, different skills are going to be required in this new space, different attitudes or mindsets, and some of those things will allow people, the headspace that they have and the skills they have will translate, they'll be transferable. But some things won't. Some routines, some practices, some habits will actually be detrimental. They'll hurt people if they try to transition. So what would you say in that space? How can people kind of dig in or build their skills, or even try to start getting some of these tools?
It all depends on the person's ability to accept the change. That's number one. That's the most important thing, is people accepting the change. If people are resisting and they're saying, no, I cannot accept this, things are going to be okay, they're shooting themselves in the foot. If they think that this after 5, 6, or maybe a year from now, things will be back to normal as it is right now, they need to think loud and clear of a contingency plan on how to enhance their skills for something different if they have to.
Situation where one, it comes back to that. We're in a transition. So the first thing, you got to acknowledge this is a transition. This is a different change that's happening. There's a phase that we're in. And then it's like, two, you have to take stock of kind of what you've been doing, what you've been up to. And then three, how can you take action? Like, what does action look like on your terms? So if I have a degree, if I have a skill set, if I have different access to whether it's information or network or different things, but starting to figure out how they can take action in taking those next steps. If you want to say it's a sprint, this is a 400 or 800-meter sprint. Otherwise, it's longer. And so again, that means we have to pace ourselves. But the start is just as with everything is critical. And so we're months into this. So some people, have had to change or adjust or get the self-care in, and that's critical. You have to get the self-care, have to set boundaries, figure out what the routine is. But then what comes next is that maintenance piece. What else can I do? Where else do I need to focus? COVID-19 is a river. There's a strong current, and you're either in there trying to tread water, saying, listen, eventually the current's going to stop or the water's going to slow down. The other option of just kind of, all right, well, let's stop paddling. Let's just see where this takes us, see how it holds in. And then the other side is, all right, listen, I gotta figure out what side of land is closer. And I got to
Yeah.
start figuring out how I can start swimming in that direction because people are taking action.
Coming back to that question, the transition of people and what they need to do is just they really need to, use the time to think about their own lifestyle. And also, they need to see what is not feeling right in their lifestyle
Mm.
right now at this moment. To me, I don't, I feel there's something is not right. So, what am I going to do about it? You know what I mean? So, what doesn't feel consistent anymore? Is it considered being considered the environment, the job, the political views, the friends, the lifestyle? This all things have to be kept in mind. You know what I mean? And you have to evaluate every and each one of them separately. To be able again to come up with your own conclusion. And you gotta be again, you gotta connect with the moment. That's very important. You gotta connect with them with the present moment, and you gotta feel the energy. Just connect with the present moment, and you're gonna feel how you can gain the energy around from the people around you. you know because negative vibes right now is the least that you want to have in a household, especially if you are the head of the household. you know so negativity and stress shows on the face, it shows on the family. It comes to a point where it becomes very unbearable, and people make wrong decisions right there and then. It's going to be very, very tough. Are things going to be all right from 2 months right now, really? Or is it going to be okay after 1 year, or is it going to be okay after a year and a half? Now time is precious. That's the time for people to think outside the box and how they can maneuver around and make something out of it.
Zeroing in on that, obviously, because that's the impact, right? I mean, even whether it's your specific industry, your business, in this digital age, in a time where things are, faster than ever, and even more so with COVID, are digitizing, and are shifting, how they were done, whether it's the process, whether it's the system, whether it's uh, the communication. That's different in this digital medium. So, what are some of the challenges, and what has that looked like for you in your space with the industry, with what's been going on, um, and the changes that have had to be made? And of course, there's still that uncertainty of, okay, well, we've been in it for a couple months, a few months, but what is that horizon? So, what are some of the challenges been for you?
I don't personally qualify for whatever you know for whatever the government um, financially offers, except for the locals. So I have to survive on my own savings basically until this pandemic is over, which until now we don't know how long. The lack of financial resources also, it's a lot of restraint on my business, and also the other challenges too to that prevent you from doing whatever you want to try to keep the momentum at least going in your work is every country right now for the government, it's on lockdown. So you get a lot of emails from all these from UK, from I'm just giving you examples, from Grenada or anything like that. They will say, you know what, we're not accepting any applications in the moment. The government's on lockdown. COVID-19 is the priority right now, you know for everybody. So again, if you're trying to promote that business to people, you don't have anything to present to the government on the other side. And also, and another thing, because there's a lot of the private and the public sectors are being closed, and a lot of layoffs. People are holding on their cash. They're not spending like they used to anymore. Absolutely. Right now, what it's been 3 months now. Maybe I used my car 3 4 times. You know what I mean? Just being out. So it's just kind of like is just your entire work and your entire daily work that you're doing is on a complete hold. You know, um, So there are a lot of challenges when it comes to between the curfews, the government lockdowns here, and other governments. People that wanting that business right now, they also reevaluating themselves. Am I ready to make a move to invest so much money to go to this country, or relocate myself? You know, uh, as long as they don't have a vaccine or a cure for that pandemic, you are not going to see a full-fledged business going on anywhere in the world. And that's going to depend on certain sectors of the business that will do good. Some of them will do very bad, you know, and that's going to end up, it's going to end up with a huge recession, you know, and that will need government involvement. Government needs to be involved. Banks needs to be involved to assist the small and medium size companies. You know, um, even large corporations right now are looking for bailouts. Airlines. I just read it the other day. $250 billion bailout for airlines. You know, it's a huge number. You got Virgin Airlines the other day. And they've announced a full bankruptcy. 16,000 employees are out of jobs. You know,
Well, that's
um,
in Australia. Yeah, some things going on, right? And as you're saying, it's uh it's impacting, and the more we go into this, the more uh I believe, but also we are already beginning to see, the further we go into this, the more we actually see in terms of the real impact. Once this first happened, everything closed up. Okay, well, we can't have it. So, some local businesses or persons were maybe the first ones to say, listen, we're closed indefinitely. Not sure, what this is going to look like. But as you're saying, then, you can play the waiting game for a few weeks, but especially whether
mm,
it's in the restaurant or the meal, some of these service sectors, um, which are heavily reliant on gatherings, which are heavily reliant on person to person. That's a very big challenge because, as you said, if we're looking at a end of 2020 into 2021 timeline, you know, that's quarters. That's not just a quarter or part of one. That's the whole cycle, which is very much so, as you're saying, like, that's an impact on many levels. So, kind of zooming back out a little bit, because we're touching on kind of the economic. So on, even, I'm thinking like the community, as well as maybe the region level. So we're kind of talking about how that's looking. People are having to stay in their communities, kind of being more within that. So what is that looking like when you kind of zoom out?
well, when it comes to community, there is a lot of frustrations among the community because again, when you're talking about a lot of job layoffs, that put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. Um, um, and when you see that people are being in a lockdown or curfews for quite a bit for a long time, that also put a lot of mental pressure on themselves. You know what I mean? Especially for a person who has a family. I mean, by all means, whether it's one person in the house, that's a mental pressure being alone, or even having a family, that's also a mental pressure. Dealing with a wife and the kids and all that kind of stuff, and vice versa. Also, the wife and the kids being at home and can't leave and do their daily routine things that they used to do, which is schools and going for walks and going to supermarket freely. So definitely definitely that left some sort of a I wouldn't say a panic for at the moment, but concerns. It's the concerns are rising. you know People are wondering, so okay, when are we gonna start getting back to work? Are we gonna getting back to work right away, or is it gonna be in phases? If you know what I mean. You know, because I don't think if the government in decided in a couple of months' time to allow people to come back to work, for example, I don't think it's going to be a full-fledged going back to work. I think it's going to be in phases. Because they're going to keep in mind the social distancing. Again, I come back to the same point. As long as we don't have a vaccine or we don't have a cure for it, the government and the law and the health authority will still take measures to make sure that, social distancing is being applied, which is the big thing, which is that's the biggest thing that we have is social distancing. You know, um, all we have, if you look at it, Andreas, all we need to do is we need to connect. People need to do a lot of reading while I mean, we have nothing else to do right now, but actually two things is spending time with the family. I mean, you gotta spend time with the family and understand their needs, because people are working, and that's an opportunity. So you can take that as an opportunity instead of being like, oh, what am I doing here? Just like, I need to be out. And secondly, you need to think about, really within yourself, the industries that you're in. you know um, do a lot of research. Is it with the recession? Because after that pandemic, it's not going to be, it's not going to be fine and dandy. Are we going to get into a very, very bad recession, worse than the one happened 1929, worse than happened in 2008, worse than the one that happened in 2013, and now we're going on this. I think this is going to be the worst recession ever, globally. That's my opinion. Because you're talking about, I mean, when if you look at 2018, what was the recession globally? It was hit by banks, creditors, and real estate, right? In 2013, something similar to it. Now the pandemic, it's the entire industry. It's all the industry. Let it be the airlines, let it be hospitality, let it be uh, you know public sectors, private sector, movies, theaters, shopping centers. It's all being locked down. It's all being locked. You know, so that's hurting the bottom line, which is the profit of each organization. You know, and 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 if that was to be reopened anytime soon, it's not going to be at a full fledged, and people still going to be a little bit skeptical whether they want to, go out and spend as much as they want to spend before or not. There was a study. I'll give you an example. There was a study made here in Kuwait during that lockdown and the curfew. Um, um, it's about people are using less money and spending less money by 65% right now. 65%. That 35% is gone where? Obviously on food, rent, whatever. Even rent is not as much anymore because the landlords are kind of giving leeways for rent. Banks are giving deferred payments until further notice, and so on. You know what I mean? So, but really, the 35% is what is the consumption of your food, and your necessities at home. You know, so there is a lack of cash, that it's being uh, uh, um, you know being spent, you know that that also hurt the banks financially, when the money is not being used as much, you know what I mean, and the money is sitting idle. So there will be a lot of uh, industries that's gonna get hit hard, and it's gonna be a lot of industries that 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 are gaining a lot out of this pandemic, a lot.
No, I mean, as you're saying it again, like nobody's safe, right? I mean, just looking at some of the numbers, obviously China's, is kind of the numbers that everyone's looking to, and we're not going to have the full picture, but you know, their GDP, people announcing first quarters as nations, it's contracting, right? They're shrinking. So when you already have some of those numbers given, and you do have kind of the times or the timelines of, okay, listen, this hit China first. Their GDP's already been affected, for quarter one. What does that look like for other countries who are, again, when you're playing this game of it is the long term. So the situation is going to be, the longer nations stay in a situation of flux, the more impact there's going to be, right? As you said, like that survey or the test and that data highlights less spending. And so as um, this continues to pick up and there's more unemployment or more laid off, that's kind of the balance of, as you said, scheduling things to reopen. Of course, people are very aware of what's going on in the states. As some states are kind of joining together to come up with phases of how they're going to reopen, what are the things that are going to be reopened. Some states have just kind of reopened a range of different services, which is interesting. But then you see, even uh, here in Canada, so Saskatchewan, I know was one of the first kind of to announce that they were also going to kind of take on a scheduled approach to reopen things, and it would take over a few months. Here's a little bit different in Nova Scotia, where they're saying we're not looking at least that was the most recent kind of official thing that I heard. They're not looking at reopening and opening up those phases until June. So it's still another month, 2 months away from having that formal conversation. So it becomes very interesting, as you're saying, um, because a recession is a bold statement, and then on top of that, for it to be worse, or obviously this is unprecedented, um, but for it to continue to pick up at a global scale, where again you have airlines, even looking at Virgin Airways, in that region, you potentially go from two competitors in a market or in an industry to one. So that's a wider impact. Not just some people are not going to have service if they're due to those flight paths kind of being canceled, but what does that do for price? The price point's going to shift if somebody has a monopoly. So there are other conversations that are going to come to the forefront, because unemployment is one of those pieces. So as you're very much so highlighting, what else has that looked like, or even in terms of talking with the family in Dubai, how differently or how similar are some of those situations where the government is still has thing on hold, or are they considering to kind of whether in Kuwait or Dubai, um, conduct similar rollouts or easing, or are they just, listen, we're going to be rigid until we have a better understanding, or at least what's been communicated?
As far as I know, Dubai has eased off the curfew. At the moment, they've opened shopping centers. They've opened restaurants. In Dubai, started just about 3-4 days ago. In Dubai. But again, it's with certain restrictions when you go into the shopping center. Four per family when you go in. No children. Anybody above below 12 are not allowed in. Anybody over age of 65, for the older seniors, they cannot go to the mall. When you go into a restaurant, maximum 4 people on the table, in a restaurant, of course, with keeping the distance from one restaurant from one table to another. Um, um, the curfew has eased up. It used to be every 3 days. You have 1.5 hours only to leave the house every 3 days. 1.5 hours only to get out, get your groceries, come back in. Now they have it from. I think they have it from. They have it from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. in the morning right now. So they eased off on that. 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. in the morning. That's the curfew. Unlike here is from 4 p.m. until 8 o'clock in the morning is our curfew. So yes, there are different approaches from different governments, as you rightly said. In the U.S., a lot. I saw. Just to touch up on quickly, I saw an interview um, um, on CNN between one of the CNN correspondent and the mayors of Vegas. She wants to open Vegas wide open.
Oh, I saw
And
that.
you saw that? That's crazy. And he kept asking her, like, what are the precautions and what are you what kind of steps are you taking, to make sure the social distancing, and everything like that, and what have you, steps are being taken. She said, I don't know. It's not my business. All I'm worried about is the 155,000 rooms that are being empty. Really? Is that what you worry about? Is 155,000 rooms? You know. But anyways, that's not what I'm. Like I said, it's not what I'm. Here to criticize anybody, but it's just like as you rightly said, different governments are taking different steps depending on how they see their economy, how they see they have the database and how much information they have on COVID-19, and how isolated they can be from one state to another. What I'm trying to tell you. So people will have to sit and think over with themselves. What am I going to do next? You have to read and connect the dots and come up with your own conclusion. And I'll for again, airlines, same thing, got hit hard. Local restaurants are getting hit hard. Here we have a bit of a there's two ways you can go about it when it comes to mental thinking or thoughts or how people are approaching things. For example, from Canada, you see a lot of people in the community. They will say, hey, support your local businesses, like restaurants, supermarkets, mini markets or any whatever. Here, no, it's not because they don't want to support the local restaurants. People are afraid of the COVID-19. It's not that they don't want to support the local restaurant. It's not about that. It's just they are wondering whether the person who's making the food is he following the hygiene stuff. So the fear factor is the cause of people not going to not taking the risk of supporting the local restaurants in Kuwait, for example, because they're a bit afraid. So there are some people are taking chances and they're doing it. You know what I mean? But I'm not a person that is doing it. I'm a bit more cautious because I everything is based on my calculated risks. You know what I mean? So everything that I do, I cook and eat at home. So so it's going to be a lot of challenges coming in ahead. It's not going to be easy. People need to be patient, understanding. But my employee or whether as a business owner, if you allow me 2 seconds, I just want to give you something, as an example here.
Please.
Now, if you're a business owner, right, and you're sitting at home, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna be okay because the bank, when I get out, is gonna be I'm gonna be able to get a loan, get a loan from the bank as a business loan, because this is a part of the pandemic thing, and my bank has to support me locally, and I'll be okay, and I'll get back on my feet again on my and get my business back on its feet again. That's good. But let's be realistic. Look at the bank side. When the bank looks at when it looks at a business model, they look at a business model at a high risk. They will look at the business, like, for example, if the person is working in a travel agency or a person working in a restaurant, or do you think the bank is going to give a loan for a restaurant during that time? No. Do you think a bank is going to give a loan to a travel agency? No, because nobody's gonna travel. Nobody's gonna, no vacations. They're gonna be taken care of. You know what I mean? So again, people has to be realistic. You can't, every person have to think of different method of breaking, of changing from where he is or she is now to what's their vision in another between 6 to a year from now. That's what they need to do. They need to do that. And in order for you to do that, you need to do a lot of reading. You need to do a lot of research, soul searching, and you need to connect the dots. That's the key, Andreas. They need to connect the dots and come up with their own conclusion, because nobody can tell them what to do. Nobody can really. There isn't. I cannot go sit. For example, I cannot go sit with my brother and tell him, you know what, leave this and leave the real estate right now that you're working in and find something else to do. I can advise him on you better look at you better look at plan B in case of real estate doesn't come back as it is. What are you going to do then? And just create awareness to the people and give them a heads up that things are realistically, it's not another couple of months or 3 months time. The pandemic in 1918. You remember the swine flu, Spanish flu? It started in 1918. When did it get over? 1920. It took 2 years. It took 2 years. I just had here just a note. The SARS started in 2002, 2004, 2 years. Swine flu started I think in 2009, and it took a year and a half. So you see what I'm talking about. This is what I'm saying. The research, you connect the dots. But the Spanish flu from 1918, 1920, that's when the full recovery happened. So that took 2 years. And if you look at the SARS again, 2002, things are kind of eased up, and they managed to control the pandemic in 2004, 2 years. And then the swine flu, a year and a half. Now this pandemic. So when you look at it, you're talking about a year and a half to 2 years. That's what I would that's what I want to bring in. I'm not trying to be negative, but again, being really realistic with your thoughts, is that's what's going to get you somewhere. But if you're really trying to, if you don't read, and you don't read history, and you don't connect the dots yourself, you're not going to be able to come up with your own conclusion correctly.
Oh, and that's
if that makes sense.
No, very much so, right? And I think that's part of the other side of when you're able to take that step back and you look at nations who are kind of almost leading in this. Obviously, you have some of the seeing. Well, I guess like Sweden, Denmark, kind of that area of Europe are handling it one way, right? And then you look at kind of France, Germany, even kind of Britain and the UK handling things differently. But then over into South Korea, into Japan. Obviously, China's kind of coming through this, at least to the best at the data and the information that's out there. But even looking at say the Middle East and Asia, how they had to deal with SARS, and then obviously MERS was different over here for us. So that level of connection, I know speaking with some people in South Korea, and just even from the news and the data, that allowed them to have that perspective and to take it early on of, okay, we're going to focus on prevention. We're going to allow ourselves to pay very keen attention to what's going on, because we don't want this to play out in a long term. And South Korea is going into an election. So, which is handled very differently than the States, who, again, two countries who are kind of heading into having to deal with that type of process, but how are they equipping? And so as you're saying, looking at history, kind of looking at the big facts, that does give us a different range of perspective. So even, I guess one of those last things as well, dealing with those things and being exposed to SARS and MERS in the business side as well. How different is COVID-19? because obviously people will say, oh, well, listen, the Spanish flu or the influenza, way back then, listen, that's 100 years ago. They didn't have social media. They didn't have vaccines. They didn't have the ability to roll those things out. How is that going to impact us now? And because some people are saying, listen, oh, well, we should be able from an economic perspective. And that's definitely going to be more conversations to pull people in. But why wouldn't we rebound quickly? Why wouldn't we be able to do these things? And why shouldn't I just be able to take time off and just relax and say the bank is going to give me this loan if I'm not in some of these high risk categories? What is different about this that's happening right now?
It's there's look, my worries is that is people are not, the media itself is there's so many misinformation that is happening in the media here. You're getting a lot of conflicting reports, a lot of conflicting information from different sources. So um, for example, as you rightly said, when you say Europe has eased down a little bit on the lockdown and letting people get out, easily, getting back to work, not full fledged, but easily, U.S. and so on. I, I that concerns me. You know, as long as we don't have, as long as we don't have the vaccine or the cure, we are in still, and we're not out of the dark yet. We're not out of the dark yet, Andreas. Um, um, if people, my biggest concern is the second wave. If people think that this is going to be, I am sure there's going to be a second wave of COVID. I am pretty sure that's going to be a second wave of COVID. How unsure I am, history talks. It's not me. It's just my research that I've done. Everything that happens, there's always a second wave. And as long as people not, uh, 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 um, as long as people not being realistic with themselves in terms of, uh, you know, this is a long haul, um, and we have to abide by the rules, and we have to come up with contingency plan. We're gonna have issues. We're gonna have problems. You know, the government can only do so much. You know, if they're supporting you for the next 4 months, they're gonna support you another 4 months, and then what? How much longer are they going? The government will be able to support. The more they're going to support, the more the country is in debt. So the more recession the country is going to be. So someone can be sitting home receiving X amount of money from the government every month. They're feeling okay with it. They're feeling safe until the pandemic is gone. But they need to think beyond that. They need to think of the recession that's going to happen after this. That's what they need to think about. The government will be out of cash because they've already subsidized a lot of their money, a lot of their budgets that they were doing to enhance some sort of certain sectors in the country to, whether infrastructure or tourism or whatever. That money is being right now in the emergency save for the people to to fund them while this pandemic is over. But literally when it's over, this government is going to be broke. So they're going to have to find ways that for the recession, to overcome the recession. And the only way that this can be done. Look, you're gonna see a lot of changes, Andreas. I mean, you're not gonna see any more. That's my opinion. I don't think you're gonna see, for the time being, and how things are being globally after the pandemic is happening. If you notice, every country right now, it's on its own. If you notice, there's no alliances. Yeah, simply, but there's no alliances. The U.S. is in trouble. Canada is in trouble. Kuwait is in trouble. Dubai is in trouble, but right now everybody is holding on their own reserves for the people that are living in their home, right? So I think the major shift is going to happen, that you're going to see a lot of local companies being opened locally.
Mm.
You know, uh, look at for example the masks. Look at example the masks. Masks is the simplest example. We don't have enough masks in Canada. There isn't enough masks to cover everybody when it's needed. Now it's Kuwait. You know what Kuwait has done? Kuwait now, because they cannot get masks from outside. Nobody's going to give them. You know what I mean? So they are producing it locally. Immediately, they made a decision to build a factory. Well, a factory, and getting the people that has the expertise in tailoring and medically to do the masks in locally, right? They're not depending it from outside, you know, um, because ventilators is the same thing. So you're gonna see a lot of shift in the markets locally, if that makes sense to you. It's not gonna be. I don't want to label it, but you're not gonna see. You're gonna see a lot of made in Canada, a lot of see made in US, a lot of see made in China. But you're not gonna see a lot of products in Canada made in US, made in China. You know what I mean? You're not gonna see a lot of that. You know,
No,
it's
no, fully agree. I think in that, and that's where I'm looking, excited to be able to bring on more people into these conversations, because from an economic side, um, that's been something that I feel has been on the back burner. But a closed economy, at least in certain spaces, does strengthen the nation. Obviously, you want to have international trade and domestic exports and things like this, as well as imports. I mean, you look at Canada. Canada's a nation of education. Is a massive export. We have so many international students. Whether it's high school, universities, especially into the masters and undergraduate programs, that something is at risk now. And so, as you're saying, supporting local, what does that look like? Because the waves is a reality. I mean, Hokkaido, Hokkaido, um, but say, one of the islands off Japan. I know that they went into um, an earlier lockdown, but then they also released and were a little bit relaxed on it, and they got that wave earlier. So then they went back into it. On the other side, when you look at Denmark, um, who maybe is one of the ones who's taken a lead in bringing students and having kids. I think it's right now it's just elementary, but back in school, and how they're practicing again, not in the physical school building. From what I've seen in some of that research, has been like they're doing classes outside. They set up kind of bigger classrooms outside, so they're making sure they're still maintaining social distancing, and they are being hesitant again with the phases. But everybody is kind of going through their own way of, okay, well, if we're here with this wave, what does that look like for the next wave? Because as you're saying, part of the process as a guarantee is when you allow people to come back out, there's going to be transmission, because this is based on person to person, groups, movement, and things like that. So because it's a guarantee, everything you're saying is even more underlined of needing to have that mindset and needing to have that headspace of, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Or if it's a sprint, it's a 400 or 800 meters. It's not a 100-meter
absolutely.
sprint.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's going to be a long way, Andreas, before we can recover out of this, because like I said, we have still few challenges ahead. Ahead of us. We're not out of that dark yet. The challenge is the fear of the second wave of the COVID-19. You know, the fear of people letting their guard down when it comes to social distancing. While you don't have the cure and you don't have the vaccine, right? the fear of lack of money, resources, lack of jobs. So all those, they are very valid and very valid concerns to a lot of people, right? And I'm one of them. So that's why, like I said, we need to think out of the box. We need to people need to think of other alternatives. And I said again, even if things go back to normal, it's going to come back in phases. So when you see the person as me and myself, as long as the COVID-19 is still around, no flights are going to be around.
Mhm.
No countries are going to be allowing people to enter. As you brought a very important point on international students in Canada. Yes, Canada is number one. I agree with you 100%. Canada is number one when it comes to education, universities in the world. You know what I mean? Beside the US and UK, right? They have one of the top universities, not to mention because also the healthcare and the support system that it's being supported by the government. So now with COVID-19 being there, that's a huge sector, because the international students that comes into Canada, they don't pay the same fees as the locals.
For like double or more.
Or more. You know what I mean? They buy homes. Look, when an international student, now you're coming into my field. Look, when an international student goes, you know, the 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 the, the first thing they do is they choose the school, the university. Okay, and as you rightly say, they pay double the price as what they do. A lot of the parents are kind of reluctant to let them stay on dorm, so most likely they buy homes. So the real estate, so number two, gonna be being hurt. You got cars. They buy cars for the kids to go to school, not buses, not public transportation. Well, it depends on the age, but somebody's in school. If somebody's going to university, right? So he's gonna make sure that he's gotta have a home, because that's when I moved to Canada. When I moved to Canada, that's what my parents has done for me. They've got me a house, they've got me a car, and they put me through school. So that's every family that does that. So you're not only hurting the educational system. There's a part of the real estate system is going to being hurt. There is a part of the automotive system is going to be hurting as well in business. So you see how this is a chain. Just a chain reaction, right? And and uh, and 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 again, where people need that's where people really need to think about alternatives. Look, if things come back to normal, hey, you never know. I mean, maybe next week somebody will come and say, hey, I got the vaccine, or I got the cure. It's only a couple of months, no big deal. It's like a slap on the wrist. People can recover, but it's not going to be that easy. It's going to be a long haul, Andres. It's going to be a long haul, and people need really. I keep emphasizing on thinking of other alternatives. Don't hold your breath, and do not build a lot of hopes on what you have right now. Hope is one thing, but being realistic is another thing.
It's a lot on many levels, individually, community, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a mid-level executive, whether you're the CEO or a mid-level employee. Everybody's impacted by this in all industries. And then, outside of business, if you like traveling, that's impacted. If you like going on vacations or studying all parts of people's lives right now are impacted at every level. Is there
Sure.
is there one kind of message that you'd like to leave people with?
Be realistic. Every community, every person, every household, they have to be realistic themselves. They have to use the time to think of their own lifestyle. They have to think about, what can I do at the moment to enhance myself for the future. Although the future it's not really clear, but you gotta be able to have a vision. That's something that a lot of people have, and now is the time to use it. Vision is something is used in every personality, in every company, and everything. It's a visionary thing. You gotta be able to have a vision. What's gonna happen, as we discussed before, what's gonna happen in 2 months' time, what's gonna happen in 5 months' time, and what's gonna happen in 15 months' time. Where do I see myself in these phases? And connect with your loved ones. Spend time with your family, and just don't panic. That's the most important thing.